Cleveland Guardians, they basically ran away with that division. They are now 86 and 60.
90% of the games. But, there's a history in this league of teams with veteran goaltenders winning by bringing in other veteran goaltenders.
Sell Malibu at the diner part of the casino.
The Cleveland Guardians, they basically ran away with that division.
They are all over Hawaii. It's Hawaii. Obviously.
Oh, of course.
There's going to be some good-looking girls.
He would wear McKinnon, and then he would
are better than every other American League team.
Yeah, but this is my show. MVP quarterback, and then the other quarterback.
No matter, I don't have to worry about my feelings to understand that.
All right, we are live on the Doug Strabo Show, which is brought to you by Stutz Betting. Bet like Michael Lepore. We have a special guest with us tonight, Mark Weiss of Mad Radio Network. He joins the Doug Strabo Show tonight. Is October 3rd, 2022. Mark, how we doing tonight?
We're doing well. Took a little bit of time off during the summer to kind of recuperate, play a little hockey, and have a little bit of fun. The Mad Radio Network's back in full swing. The baseball show is going to be due out in a couple of weeks, featuring Eric Stauber and, of course, Jimmy Driscoll, former Major League player. They'll be combining together for a lot of playoff action and insights. I'll be producing the show, maybe some guest spots here and there, but it's going to be there, baby. The hockey show's back. It's a little retooled. We just added the prodigy Joe Allen as a member of the cast and rebranded the name. And I believe the new name will be coming out sometime this week. I'll drop a little bit of a hint on the name, even though we've already done the show. We did the first show, and we did a preview. You were actually there. Thank you very much for helping us out when we did
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yep, we did it. It was on 9/11, and it was a real solemn day. And we got through the show, and thank you a lot for helping us out on that one. So that's a good thing.
No problem. The
new name of the podcast is going to be and now I'm drawing a blank. So that's real good of me. But we're definitely they're telling me keep the name under wraps until the next show, so I can't even throw it out. We'll just say that it'll be season 4, episode 2, but just a little bit of new branding, a lot of the same old hijinks, just a lot more focus on the metropolitan area teams and the original 6 teams.
Oh, yeah, I saw that part.
Yeah, which is good because that's where our expertise lies.
Yeah.
Jay's a Ranger fanatic. I like the Rangers and the Habs, and so that's where I'm at. I also love the original 6 teams. We'll probably look for some guests to jump in and out, talk about Islanders, because none of the 3 of us are really keen on the Islanders, so we'll do that. And then here and there we'll touch on the champs, and we'll touch on any other team that's streaking and looks hot, but for the most part, stick to what you know, as they say.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we will be sticking with some baseball tonight. So let's get it started. The Mets and the Braves are within a game and a half each of each other. We were playing hockey the other night, and you mentioned that the Mets are done. So are the Mets heading for this wild card spot Friday, Saturday, and Sunday?
Atlanta opened the door a little bit by losing 4-0 to the Marlins tonight. So that gives the Mets a glimmer of hope, but they pissed away the tiebreaker. So the Mets now have to sweep, and the Braves have to get swept for the Mets to be able to take the East. They gave it away. Let's just be completely honest and upfront out there. You got 2 aces going into the series, and you have to think your chances are fantastic if you're a Mets fan. And what happens? Friday night, the man who wants to opt out, the man who thinks he's worth $45 to $50 million per year for like 6 to 7 years, gives up 3 home runs, throws a 6/3 line, and guess what happens? The team loses. Now, let me ask you this question, Doug. I know it's your show and I shouldn't be asking questions, but I got to ask you. Do you think number 41 or number 36 would go out there and throw a 6/3 on a game on a game that was needed to clinch a division?
I think they would have tried to throw a fastball.
No, what I'm saying is, do you think that Seaver or Kuzman would have had a 6-inning, 3-run line in a big game like that?
Oh, probably not.
Exactly. That's the point. The point is, this guy thinks he's worth 45 to 50 million. If you're worth 45 to 50 million, earn it in that one game. If he wins game one on Friday and they lose the next two, they still own the tiebreaker.
Yeah, they do.
They own the tiebreaker. So all he has to do is that's a one and done game for him. So like, this is a guy that let's be honest, missed 2/3 of the season. So he can't be arm weary, which brings me to the next guy. He goes out there, and I'll give him credit. Even Smoltz gave him credit on the broadcast. He battled. He really did. But he didn't have his A stuff. That's kind of the difference between Scherzer and DeGrom. When Scherzer doesn't have his A stuff, he can battle his way through. When DeGrom doesn't have his A stuff, it's shit to bedtime. And, the Braves they got the best of Scherzer. And, of course, the Mets weren't scoring, which has been a real problem since Marte's been out of the lineup. Let's not pull any punches there. Since that guy broke his finger or whatever the case may be, since he's been out of that lineup, this team's offense, other than McNeil, has been invisible. Freaking visible. But the bottom line here is this is probably a 100-win team.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And you win 100, you get 100 wins. Very infrequently do you not win your division. So it's not all rainy and Flushing, because even if they which is more than likely take the wild card, they're still going to host 3 opening round games, and they're going to get the worst of the teams getting in there. So that means they're probably going to get Philadelphia. And last time I checked, they destroyed Philly. Well, Philly's got the edge over Milwaukee right now. So, and they've beaten both of those teams, and all 3 games are home. And guess what? If they can't win those 3 games with their 2 aces going in games 1 and 2, then they don't deserve to go to the next round.
That's a good point. And back to your point with Seaver and Kuzman, they would have gone a complete game.
What's Kuzman's record in the World Series career? Are you going to look it up? I know it off the top of my head. But go ahead, look it up.
He's probably undefeated, I would assume.
Pitched in 2 World Series. Pitched in 69, threw 2 games, and he threw 2 games in 73.
All right, let's see.
While Doug's looking that up, I'll do another shameful promotion for Mad Radio Network. Also, little promotion for Graduate Cup hockey at Aviator in Brooklyn.
Oh yeah, I see the graduation cup in the background.
Yep, there it is. She comes home to me.
Looks like 3-0.
Yeah, never lost in a big game in a World Series. Oh, what did Seaver do when the Mets had to pitch a play-in game in 1973 to win the division against the Cubs in Chicago in a 43-degree rainy day? What did Seaver do?
Probably threw a complete game.
Well, we know he won the game because they won the division. That's the difference. Those were horses. Those were men. That's why their numbers are up in the rafters. That's probably, if we look at it now, sometimes they tell you can't judge history until you're like anywhere from 15 to 20 years down the road. But for DeGrom, I think we could start to look at his history and say, you know what? Granted, he played on some teams that didn't score a lot of runs and weren't great, but he didn't win a lot of games. Even the years he won the Cy Young Award, he wasn't a 20-game winner or even close to it. Whereas Seaver won 19 games in 1973 on a Mets team that scored hardly any runs and finished 3 games over 500. That's a huge difference. Now, I understand there's only one Tom Seaver, and I was fortunate enough to see him pitch. But still, DeGrom wants that kind of money, then you got to be Tom Seaver. And you ask yourself, what would Tom do? He's not going to sit there and complain and cry, my arm bothers me by this. You know what, Jake? Instead of throwing 101 and feeling perfect, and when your tweak don't show up, throw 93 one day and get by with guile. Ask Seaver what he had to do in Game 6 of the World Series in 73. Reggie Jackson said that man had nothing when he came out of the pen. He had nothing and kept us off stride for over 7 innings. But he had nothing, and he still went out there and manned the heck up.
Yeah, I'm in his 69 season for Seaver. I'm seeing a lot of 7-inning, 8-inning, and 9-inning. Barely see any 6 or 5.
And you're looking at 25 wins. He won one quarter of the Mets games
7.
that year. He won 1/4 of their games. When's the last time DeGrom's won a quarter of the games of the Mets for the Mets?
Well, he only has like 82 career wins.
Isn't that crazy? The guy doesn't even have 100 wins, and he's approaching what is year 35.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a guy without 100 wins is asking for that kind of money.
I don't think he's a Hall of Famer.
Let's be honest. Look at those numbers. How can you be a Hall of Famer? He's got middle reliever win numbers.
Yeah, 82 and 65.
That's middle reliever numbers. And you look, and then you look over at 3,000 miles across the country, and you got a guy who already has 3 Cy Youngs, probably should have had a 4th one, but has 3. Reinvented himself after he lost his fastball and had a lot of injuries. And this year he's a 10-game winner, and his ERA is under 2.5, and he's not going to win the Cy Young, but he's going to get Cy Young votes, and he's only working for $10 million. So who's
Clayton
more valuable?
Kershaw?
Yeah, who's more valuable?
Oh, Kershaw.
But look what he's making, and look what the other guy wants, and they're the same age. These guys are the same age. Plus, DeGrom's been double damaged already. He was already Tommy John before he even got to the majors.
All right, Kershaw's ERA this year is 2.30.
10 wins.
And then DeGrom is at 308.
Yep. And who's got more wins?
DeGrom is at 5. Kershaw is at, let's see, 11 and 3.
And what's the whips? Because that's the best way to tell for pitchers. What's your whip?
Kershaw is 0.96.
Not too shabby.
And then DeGrom is
probably 1.1.
Let's see, where is it at? DeGrom's whip is
1.1, right?
I hate this phone. It's not loading yet. Let's pull it up.
In either case, they call it the smell test or the eye test. The eye test tells me which guy's more valuable. You're a Met fan. Would you take Clayton over DeGrom?
Right now, I would.
Well, when wouldn't you? Because look at the body of work that Clayton's put up. When in their careers would you not have taken Clayton over DeGrom? Maybe the 2 years DeGrom won the Cy Young Award, but still, Clayton had more wins and his team went to the playoffs. And I don't care what the modern day soothsayers say about baseball. When the day's done, and take it from me, I mean, I've never pitched in the major leagues. Obviously, I've done a show for years with a guy who did pitch in the major leagues, who unfortunately just passed away. But the key thing is, I pitch, modified softball on Sundays, and I look at it this way: I got to match the other guy. I got to be better than him. I got to walk off that mound at the end of the day and get a win. If he gives up 10 runs and I give up 9, it's a good day for me. If he gives up 2 runs and I give up 3, it's a terrible day for me. That's the way pitchers were always looked at. You got to pitch better than the other guy. And I don't want to hear this crap about the Mets don't hit for him. Well, why don't the Mets hit for him? Sometimes you got to question yourself, why is that? Like, what happens when is it because his opponent is that much better of a pitcher? In the old days, if you said the Mets didn't hit for Seaver, well, yeah, Seaver was pitching against Carlton. So maybe that makes sense because Carlton was pretty darn good pitcher in his own right. But if you're pitching, but the matchups don't work out that way that often. And how many times did DeGrom go up against the number 4 or 5 starter? And yet this Mets still didn't post any runs for him. But
his whip this year is 0.75.
What?
0.75.
That's his whip?
Yeah.
It doesn't smell right to me. Does it smell right to you?
Well, the thing with DeGrom, if you watch him this year,
home runs.
He strikes out a lot of guys.
He does.
He's a strikeout pitcher, but it's like mostly against like the bad team. Sometimes it's in clutch moments, but then he always gives up that home run ball when you shouldn't give it up.
Exactly. And you know what? Clayton battled that when he started modifying from being a power pitcher to a pitcher. And his first year or two that he battled that, he gave up home runs, but he was kind of strategic with them. Like he gave up a lot of solo home runs, gave him up like the third time through the order. In DeGrom's case, he's throwing an awful lot of pitches to strike people out because he's trying to throw 101. What's the crime of throwing 95 and picking the corners and getting guys to break some bats and weak groundouts?
So
Think about that.
Let's stick to Clayton Kershaw. Is this going to be his final year, and can the Dodgers go on a run to win another World Series?
Well, everything's lined up for them, right? I mean, they've got the best record in baseball. They're sitting at 110 wins right now with 3 more to go. So they could be at 113. Every time this team's had injuries, that's the key thing with this team is they have more depth than you can imagine. Because every team gets injuries, and they've not been immune to it. I mean, Tony Gonsolin, 16-1, on his way to a 20-win season easily, and the Cy Young Award, and he's been out for a month and change. And they can rest him and not rush him back. He's coming back. He'll throw there during the series to see what he's got, but they didn't have to rush him. That's the amazing thing about this team. Friedman and Roberts and company built the team full of depth. Now, I've heard the detractors say, yeah, but that wins 162 games. That's not going to win in the playoffs. Well, yeah, the Braves are battle-tested, no question about it. But look at the Dodgers, across the board. You got Freddie Freeman at first base, who is probably going to win a batting title. He's probably going to win a batting title and a Gold Glove. So, and I watch him night in, night out save throws that other guys don't save. I mean, Gavin Lux hitting about 280, 290 at second base, left-handed bat, and you can't beat that. Shortstop, you're looking at Trey Turner, who's battling for the batting title along with Friedman. And Turner's thing is, look at the numbers you're getting from that guy. He's about 300, 20 plus home runs, in the 90s for RBIs. He runs like a deer, can steal bases. He does everything you could possibly imagine. Last year when they got him, I said that's the end of Corey Seager. Remember I said that?
Mm-hmm.
Spot on right. And what has Corey Seager done? Hit 245 in Texas in meaningless games.
I forgot about him.
Yeah, you did, because when have you seen him? You couldn't find him in a milk carton. Exactly. You forgot about him because no one's talking about him. But he's hitting like 244, 245. I mean, he's got 30 home runs plus. But what good is that if you're hitting 240 something? And that's the thing. He took the money, he ran. You can't blame these guys for taking the money, but then you got to live with the fact that you're going to be playing in an outpost like Texas, like Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's just it. That's where he is. That's what he's going to do. That's his choice.
Look at your pitching stats. You got Julio Reyes, 17 wins, Tony G, 16, Tyler Anderson, 15, Kershaw, 11.
There's no pitching staff that matches up to the Dodgers. And then they get stronger in a short series because you only go with 3 pitchers, and then you take your 4th and 5th starter, and now they're in your bullpen. The only weakness this team has, and it's the elephant in the room, is who's going to close the games out. Dave Roberts is talking about going to a bullpen by committee with a lot of good guys and go with situational matchups. You can't put Kimball out there because he's just not been good. And he knows it, and the team knows it, and they don't need to have any loyalty to him. It's not like the years when Kenley Jansen was messing up and they're like, well, he's our guy. He's been with us. They don't need to have any loyalty to this guy. They brought him in right before spring training. He had an up and down season last year. He was mediocre in Chicago. He went over to across town to the Sox, and he closed out the year well. But nobody was thinking that this guy was coming back and he was going to be the second coming of Mariano Rivera. No one expected that. No one expected him to be as bad as he's been. He's been awful. And the thing is, the team has to think about who's going to be their pitchers. Is it Gratterall? Is it Price? Because Price is back now also. Gratterall and Price just came back last week. Does Trinan come back? He's been off again this year with injuries. When he's healthy, the guy's darn good. Then you got Martin and a whole load of other. There's no weakness on this team except for who's going to close. And the question is, can any of these guys who are really, really, really good step up into that closer role, which is a different mindset?
I'll go with Chris Martin.
I would go Chris Martin too. I think that he's been better than Kimbrel the whole year. But they gave Kimbrel every shot they could. You know why? Because even when he blew games, they still came back and won. They have the record for most comeback wins.
Yeah, they're probably the best team in the National League.
There's no question about it. And I'm going to give it a shout out to my friend Tony Rubo, who is a diehard Dodger fan. But Tony always says this guy's a push button manager. He doesn't make any really good strategic in-game decisions, and he gets caught with his pants down sometimes. And I tend to agree that might be the case, but he's the greatest psychologist for this team. These players respond to him. They play hard for him, and they love him, and maybe that makes up for it. But I think if you look at the Pythagorean, they're probably 4 games under where they should be based on their managerial skills of Doc Roberts. Then again, you never know. What if they had a fiery guy like a Billy Martin? You know, maybe that team only wins 90 games because they don't want to play for the guy. They love the guy they play for him. And home field advantage throughout the World Series, as long as they're in it. Last year, if you remember what did them in, they won 105 games and they finished in second place.
Yeah.
And that hurt them because they had a 5-game series against the Giants, and then the next series they come up short. They actually had to play the play-in game first, right? They had to beat Milwaukee in the play-in game, and then they had a 5-game with the Giants, and that should have been your LCS. And then they go play an 88-win Atlanta team that caught fire at the right time. They caught fire at the right time, and let's face it, they caught the Dodgers all beat up. That's why it's so important now, especially with this elongated playoff. It's so important to get that home field advantage locked up and not play in the first round here. Because who wants to play, even though the Mets are going to host 3 games, you don't want to spend your starting rotation and get it all out of whack to then go to the next round.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to deal with that.
Plus, you guys win. You got to go play Atlanta.
No, I think if the Mets win, they play the Dodgers.
No, I thought they reseeded after the first round. They reseeded, and the Dodgers get the team with the worst record.
Oh, I don't know.
Because the Mets aren't going to be the team with the worst record if they win. Because even though they didn't win the division, they still have a better record than St. Louis.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure how this playoff is working.
They definitely have a better record than – well, St. Louis is going to match up against – who is it? Mets get Philly, and St. Louis against San Diego. Right?
Yeah.
That's how it matches up. St. Louis and San Diego both have worse records than the Mets. The Mets are better than those teams. The Mets, when St. Louis came in, was it early September? You guys handled them well.
Yeah, they did. Because according to the standings right now, it's you got Philly playing
hanging
St.
on
Louis,
with a thread,
and then Mets versus the Padres.
Actually, I think Philly and Milwaukee is the only race that's still open right now. Everything else is clinched across Major League Baseball.
Yeah, everything else is set.
The AL is set, and the NL, we're just looking at you're looking to see who you play. It's either Philly or Milwaukee, and there's no game 163 anymore, which means if they're tied, Phillies get the tiebreaker.
Yeah, because if the Mets got that tiebreaker, they would have won the division.
Dude, I can understand that tiebreaker. That's fine. You don't need to play a playing game to win the division when you're going to drop into the wild card. But I can't understand using football mentality for baseball when it comes to the playing, not having a game 163 to get the final playoff spot. You should have that because if you're Milwaukee,
interesting.
Because think about it, you're Milwaukee. If you're tied with Philly at the end of the year, and because Philly has the tiebreaker, you don't go to the playoffs, even though you have identical records. This is baseball. It's not like football where you only play 16 or 17 games. Here you're playing 162. If it's a dead heat after that, you got to play the play-in. It's a bad look for baseball.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like Rob Manfred.
Well, you know what? In my opinion, he's done. He didn't exactly have a tough act to follow, and yet he's still doing a shitty job. Because think about it. If you want to follow somebody, you don't want to follow somebody like a Vince Lombardi. You want to follow someone like Bud Selig, who, let's face it, no bargain.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy's in the Hall of Fame, and I scratch my head. I go like, wait a second. How's a guy in the Hall of Fame when he presided over the steroid era, and all the guys who took steroids can't get in. So it's like
That's true.
If you can't put Bonds in, and you can't put McGuire and Sosa in, and the litany of other guys who might belong in, or Clemens, but you can put Selig in. That's like the guy that he's the guy who just turned a blind eye while someone shoplifted in the store, and then the shoplifters get arrested, and then they turn around and say, "What about the security guard? I didn't see anything." Well, he should get fired too. But wait,
that's a good point. I never thought about it that way.
But wait, he cleaned up. Remember, his thing is he cleaned up baseball. He got testing and he cleaned it up. So that's like the guy who pushes you into the ocean and you're drowning, and then he jumps in and saves you and said, "See, I saved your life." And you're like, "But you threw me in."
That's true. So let's talk a little bit of the American League. The Mariners, can they go on a run, or was this just, you know what, we finally did it, we made the playoffs, but it's going to be a tough road?
You know what? This is a team that had the longest run of not making the postseason. I mean, they out-pirated the Pirates in that respect. And you look at it to the fact that I go by the celebrations when teams clinch to make the playoffs. And this team looks they celebrate like they won the World Series, which makes me feel like they're just happy they're there.
Yeah, James was saying that to me. He's like, why do they celebrate with beer, alcohol, champagne after winning a division or winning the wild card or winning the division series or just clinching the playoffs? But in hockey, you got to wait you wait till you win the cup to celebrate.
Well, hockey and talking hockey and baseball in the same breath, they're two totally different entities. One is the toughest trophy to win, and the other one
trophy to win.
They keep changing the rules to try to make it tougher, but all they're doing is just they're ruining. Baseball's best niche was that when you won that 162 game marathon, you got to go to the postseason. You know, that was like that made it so interesting. Now the 162 game season, it's almost turning into college basketball. You know, where nobody cares about a regular season college basketball game. No one gives a crap about those matchups. Only time people care is when March Madness starts. And baseball's almost at the point where they're going to relegate the thing. We have no exciting pennant races anymore.
Yeah, we really don't.
What good is that? And I understand their point because they needed to open it up because they have more teams, and they also wanted people going to games because if your team, you know, let's say you're San Diego. San Diego, by all accounts, is going to have a pretty darn good season, probably win close to 90 games. But in a normal year in the Western Division, if only two division teams made it like in the old days, they'd have been eliminated by July looking at the Dodgers being up by 20. So they'd have nothing to play for.
Yeah, that's true.
So at least they have something to play for. And if you look at attendance from like back in the golden era of baseball in those 40s, 50s, and 60s, attendance was putrid. Because the losing teams or the teams that were not close enough to win it, their attendance was terrible in August and September. And then the teams, if they were far ahead, their attendance was bad too. I mean, how do you explain the 62 Mets outdrawing the Yankees in 62? One team won the World Series and the other team lost 120 games.
So what are the odds we see a rematch of 2020 where it's the Tampa Bay Rays going up against the Los Angeles Dodgers? You know where I stand on that.
I know where you stand on that, but your team's just not been impressive down the stretch. They just haven't. They're gonna be a third place team making the playoff, and they just haven't impressed me. They had that chance. You and I talked about it. They needed to win those two games against the Yankees and make it interesting, and they didn't do it.
Yeah,
I thought they were
like
too.
20 runs.
I thought they were too, and you and I both talked about it. And I said, if they make that run, they're going to win the division. But they didn't make the run. They not only didn't win the division, they let Toronto leapfrog them in the standings.
Yeah, and they got the 6th spot right now, so they'd be facing off against Cleveland.
Yeah, I mean, so that's actually not a terrible matchup because I don't think
I like it. I like that matchup.
I think Cleveland, basically lollygagged the season until, middle to end of August, and then looked around and said, Chicago sucks. They're not winning anything. And Minnesota's ready to fade. And they got beer muscles, and they went on and beat up the poor Sisters of Charity, and they compiled a decent record and pretty much won the division going away. And probably did the best thing ever for baseball by winning that division is they banished Tony La Russa back to retirement. Good riddance, Tony.
Yeah.
The godfather of steroids. Goodbye. We don't need you anymore. You know what? The game has passed you by. Everybody now knows you won all those games with Dave Duncan as your pitching coach.
Yeah, I felt like he was irrelevant the past few years.
Well, you know what? They won the division last year, and I think they won it despite him. But the thing is, nobody fires managers who win divisions. So you knew he was coming back unless basically burned the place down. Plus, he's Jerry Reinsdorf's buddy. That's another senile guy, Jerry Reinsdorf, who thinks it's still 30 years ago. You know, that's why I brought him back in the first place. But he can't relate to these younger players. And when he tries to relate to them, he just says stupid things and does stupid stuff. Like he was the guy who made the big deal over the Josh Donaldson, Tim Anderson thing. It was much ado about nothing until Tony La Russa stuck his 2 cents in and tried to make it a big freaking deal.
I was at that game.
That was his claim to fame for the season. Big deal for him. But back to the American League, you know, it's an interesting league because I'm not convinced that I'm just not I'm convinced that the American League this year reminds me of the way the AFC was in football in the 80s and 90s. Somebody's going to win it, but they ain't going to do much in the World Series. I think the balance of power has really shifted back to the NL, and I think the reason is because the NL finally has the DH.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because they never did before. And so think about it. You go to the World Series and you plug a guy in as your DH who's really a bench player, where the American League has a guy who's the DH who turns out to be a regular in the lineup who probably bats about 270 and hits 30 home runs. Now we're even. And honestly, I know someone's going to give you hate mail when I say this, but I think it was darn good to see the DH across the board. And I know the purists are going to shoot me because I used to be one of the purists. I used to say, no, you need the pitcher to bat. It's an integral part of the game. But here's the problem. Pitchers only pitch 5 or 6 innings. They get one stinking at bat in the game anyway. The whole purpose was you'd have to be in the 7th or 8th inning. Your guy's down by a run or tie game. Do you leave him in because he's dealing or do you take him out? Now you take him out anyway.
Yeah.
He's long gone. So, and why get these pitchers injured when they cost $40 million? Why get them injured running bases? Who was the guy from the Yankees who ended his career? Was it Shin-Ming Wang?
Yeah. I remember.
Ended his career running on the bases because he's used to it.
And it was against Houston, too, before they became AL.
Right. Before they took the deal and came over. But honestly, I mean, you guys could win the American League. I'm not going to say you can't. I think it's so wide open.
Yeah.
Like you look at the National League and you say, okay, Phillies or Brewers, no matter which one of those two teams win, they're out the first round. They're on the road. They're playing a much better team. They're not winning. And then you look at San Diego and say, what have they really done? They made that big trade for Juan Soto. What has he done but hit 238?
Yeah, they haven't done anything.
There's not anything, so he's not. There's really, the only team that's in that wild card round that could scare anybody would be the Mets, and it's only because they have the 2 aces. But they have to be aces. So they have to be aces in that round to get to the next round, and then they got to keep it going.
And
That's
go ahead, finish.
You go.
And if you look at the standings, in the American League, you have one 100-game winner, which is the Astros at 104.
Mm-hmm. The Astros.
And then in the National League, you have Atlanta 100. The Mets could win 100. And then you got the Dodgers at 110.
Yep. What I say again, the only way you get that many 100-win teams in the same league is one of 2 ways. One, the league is really top-heavy, and that means you got a lot of really, really bad bottom feeders. Or the interleague games were dominated by your league. Because that's how you pick up wins. Because when you're beating up on Kansas City and beating up on Minnesota and Detroit, and teams and Texas, that's how you get your wins. And then if you beat the higher level teams, like the Mets had a better record against the Yankees this year, right? In interleague, were they tied?
I think it was tied.
Was tied? Most years the Yankees beat them. Most years the Dodgers struggle when they play against the Angels. This year they pretty much swept them in. So I think it's a combination of a lot of bottom feeders in the NL, and the NL did much better against the AL in interleague play because of the DH now. Because now everyone's on the same foot.
So
And I actually like what the Dodgers do with the DH. They rest their all-star catcher Will Smith by letting him bat fourth and DH.
that's a smart move.
That is a very, very, very smart move. Plus, their backup catcher, their pitchers love to throw to him. And now that he's hitting about 230, you can carry that guy.
So before we let you go, I want one American League winner and one National League winner, and then I want you to do a surprise pick.
Well, National League winner, of course, you know where I'm going with that. So I don't have to say
you're
it.
going with the Dodgers.
Yeah, and it's not because it's chalk; it's because they're my Dodgers. So without a doubt, I'm going with the best organization in baseball, no question, through and through, from 1 to 40 on the roster. There's no question about it. They've got the arms. You know, you can't be Venus de Milo in the postseason. You got to have the arms, and they've got them. So that's my pick. And for the American League, I just, for tradition purposes, would I love to see a Dodger-Yankee World Series and watch us kick their rear ends in, because that would be so much fun, especially living here in Yankee territory.
I would love that, to see the Yankees lose.
I would, because people say Yankee fans are miserable. Yankee fans are at their most miserable, not when they miss the playoffs, not when they get knocked out in the first or second round, but if they get to the World Series and lose there. That's when Yankee fans are completely miserable. It's like
I can't wait.
It's like stealing a steak from a dog. You're going to get bit by them. And so because they walk around, we won 27 championships. And I always respond, how many of you were you a part of? I don't go around saying we won 7 world championships, because I had nothing to do with it. I rooted them on. I watched them. I go to games. Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to get out to the coast and watch them live. Most of the time it's here or in Washington or Philly where I get to see them. Or, when they make a guest appearance up in the Bronx, I'll go up there too. But absolutely Dodgers. American League, I'm going to go with, my heart says I want the Yankee-Dodgers series, so I want to go with the Yankees. But I can't see that team winning. I just don't see – it's like that's the softest 97, 98 wins I've ever seen. So I just can't go with them. I hate to say it, but I have to say the Asterisks are probably going to win. Again, it's going to be a rematch Dodgers against Houston. I know I hate to go chalk, because then everyone says, oh, big deal, you went chalk. But the chalk is so far ahead of everyone else that I have to go with it. It's like, almost like an old-fashioned pre-1969 pennant race where those two teams would have been the top 2 in their leagues. They would have gone to the World Series directly. I just see both of them winning, but it's a crapshoot, man. These elongated playoffs, although now with this extra round for the teams that aren't the top 2, I like it. I at least like that part of it, where it really punishes the wild card teams. And if you're the number 3 weaker division, it's not good for you either. And you want a surprise team that could shock everyone? Mm-hmm. Surprise team, St. Louis.
I think they could go on a run.
Because I think there's a surprise team, because it's like how magical has Tio Albert been since the All-Star game? What's he getting, like 330?
Yeah, and he's got 703 home runs now. He hit 2 more tonight.
Well, it was last night. If he hit 2 more tonight, I think he's wouldn't he be at 705?
Oh yeah, tonight technically. Yeah, that's right. 703. Yeah.
Yeah. If he had 2 tonight, because I know their game against Pittsburgh was tied. If he had 2 more tonight, he'd be at 705.
Yeah, that's right.
And by the way, I just want to give a shout out, a negative shout out to all the detractors out there who are shooting their mouths off and saying, "Oh, he's got to be back on the juice. He's got to be doing that," or they're giving him Twinkies. First of all, the guy was never ever even suspected of doing juice. Number one, and just because he played in that era, so did Cal Ripken. No one ever accused him. So stop that. Don't accuse people unless you at least have some sort of circumstantial evidence. Like with Roger Clemens or Barry Bonds. Oh, they never failed the test. Really? Well, guess what? They found all the other shit that puts them in the crosshairs of being part of it. So we know what those. Why was Barry Bonds hanging out with Balco? Why does hat size grow 2 sizes? Your hat size get bigger?
That's a good point.
Here's a dude who in the mid 80s had an afro and his hat size was bigger in his final 2 years with a shaved head.
That's right.
Really, he grew 3 hat sizes. Think about that.
That's
And
a
then
good
his and then his
point.
foot grew. My foot hasn't grown since the 6th grade.
That is a good
I've been a
point.
size 11 since 6th grade.
Yeah, I've been a size 12 since who knows when.
Exactly, probably since the 6th grade. They used to always joke. They used to say, "Oh, he's got big feet. He's going to grow into them, like a pet, like a dog has big paws."
And
But I think St. Louis. I do because it's a feel good story with Tio Albert. Can Yachty catch game in night out in the postseason? Actually, the biggest problem for them is Waino. All of a sudden, since the last month, he's kind of lost it. He's now 10-11.
yeah, he hasn't been consistent.
No, well, he's been consistently bad in the last month. He's 10-11, and his ERA ballooned to like 3.89 or something like that. He was definitely in the Cy Young conversation 6 weeks ago, and now he's in the Sayonara conversation. So that could be their Achilles, but they could get hot and do that. And certainly your Metsies could. Again, like we said, if the aces are aces and not jokers.
That's the key. And then for me, I've been saying all year long, the Rays are going to beat the Dodgers in 7 games, a rematch of 2020 World Series. Can't wait.
Ain't going to happen. We want to put a little bet on that? I know you already owe me a pizza. Do you want to go for double or nothing?
We can.
All right. Double or nothing. We'll make it a 2-prong bet. The first part of the prong of the bet is who goes further if they both don't get to the series. So we got to be who went further. So that's the first prong. The second prong is if they do both get to the World Series, then that part gets obviously thrown out. And now we're talking about who wins the series outright.
All right. Well, I think LA would probably go further.
All right.
They would probably go. Maybe lose to Houston.
It's double or nothing. If I lose, we're back even. If you lose, now I'm looking at 2 pies.
Yeah, 2 pies.
2 pies. Sonny, back up the truck. I'll give you my address, 52 Willowwood.
I don't think you should say that online, even though people could probably find it.
Well, if they want to bring me pizza, more the merrier. Who's going to come after me? Disgruntled Yankee fans?
Probably. Or a disgruntled Ray fan.
Oh, well, I don't think they're going to be disgruntled. I mean, they're an amazing franchise because with the budget that they have and compared to the budget the Yankees have, what do the Yankees have? 12 more wins? No, not even right. 8 more wins?
97, 86, 11.
11 more wins. Boy, you're looking at millions upon millions for 11 more wins and a lot more agita.
Yeah.
Now, as we've all learned over and over and over again, the one thing you have to grow from the ground up is pitching. It's got to come from the farm because you can't go out there and buy a Garrett Cole and spend $300 million because you only get to buy one of them. And then when you do buy that one of them, every outing he goes out there, everyone expects him to be Sandy Koufax or Pedro Martinez in his prime. That's too much for one guy.
We've built it through the system, and I love that.
Sounds good. Well, I know we're running short on time, and you want to jettison me, which is fine. And we'll see you Sunday at 11 o'clock over at Roller at Monroe.
If it doesn't rain.
Oh, it's not. I've gotten from reliable sources that this rain stops on Wednesday and we're clear, and we're gonna have like a 55-degree day, so it'll be perfect to be outdoors.
Oh, will be.
It'll be perfect.
And I get out early that day, so I'll stop by for sure.
What time are you out?
12:30.
If you're out 12:30, we'll still be skating because we're supposed to get there at 11:30. We'll start at 11:30, so we won't start till noon.
Oh yeah, that's true.
You know us. We're the late crowd.
Yeah.
We don't start till the overture's over.
You got that right.
So
All
true.
right, Mark. This has been a great episode. Let's go Rays, baby. Take care,
Think
buddy.
blue. Think blue. Think blue.
We'll see.
We
All
will
about
see.
October.
We got it. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
Bye.
That was Mark Weiss, ladies and gentlemen, on the Doug Strava Show, which is brought to you by Stutz Betting. Bet like Michael Lepore. See you guys next time. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate your support. You can also follow me on Dougie and Espo, starring every Wednesday if Kyle decides to show up. It is Kyle's birthday tomorrow, so we do want to say a happy birthday to Kyle Esposito. Take care, guys, and we'll see you next time. The Doug Strava Show is brought to you by Stutz Betting. Bet like Michael Lepore. MVP quarterback. And then the other quarterback we have is Derek Carr.
Everything happens to me. Zach Wilson getting hurt happens to me. Not getting let into Bar A happens to me. Going to the hospital after the Jets beat the Titans happened to me.
Especially going back to Columbus down.
Why? They were horrible this
So Malibu at the diner.
These leaders of these countries.
So Malibu at the diner part of the casino.
The Cleveland Guardians, they basically ran away with that division.
Girls
They
all
are
over
now-
Hawaii. It's Hawaii, obviously.
Oh, of course.
There's gonna be some good-looking girls.
He would like wear like McKinnon, and then he would
Are
wear
better than every other American League team.
Yeah, but this is my show. MVP quarterback. And then the other quarterback.
No matter, I don't have to worry about my feelings to understand that.